Greetings, my friends. Welcome to the next episode of the Mint Mob Podcast. Jason here, joined by my buddy Alex across the pond in Germany. We're going to jump into the usual stuff, but I think we've got some topics that'll be of interest to collectors today and art lovers today. And before we dive in, let's check in with Alex. How you doing, buddy?
Hey man, I'm doing great. Looking forward to have another fancy episode today. It's funny, right? Like when I looked for topics, everything I read was Epstein here, Epstein there. It's quite like massive in the media. I'm not sure if it's covered the same in the United States. Obviously, not a topic we want to talk about today. But yeah, looking at the crypto markets, we've seen quite a movement recently, and I'm not sure. It doesn't even look like people are panicking, right? Because it looks like people have been expected that. It's like they're waiting for Bitcoin 60,000 or something, and some people look like they have already surrendered because people have been waiting for Bitcoin 200,000 or altcoins like parabolic rally never really happened, at least for most of the altcoins. And right now it almost feels like people have just accepted their fate, and nothing you can do about it. It's destiny. Markets are not behaving the way people expected them to do. Now we have a little decline in prices. We have actually had a pretty long sideways movement, right? We saw prices, especially when we speak about prices, we usually refer to Bitcoin. So we've seen the price range moving, between, I don't know, like 80 or 85 to 95 for almost 3 or 4 months, I think since mid-November. And now we have seen them falling pretty sharp within the last 2 or 3 days. I think what was the low? I think it was somewhere around 75. And yeah, like I said, it doesn't look like people are panicking. I saw a couple posts about, strategy being like below their average, cost for per Bitcoin. And yet, Michael Saylor bought more. I think today I saw an announcement that they bought or acquired 800 more Bitcoins. So yeah, what like it's pretty difficult to get an impression of what the sentiment is right now, because obviously it's bad, but it doesn't look like people have that expectation of something like a big rally happening soon. So are we in a bear market now? Do we have to cope with that situation for the next couple of months? What do you think?
Well, I think you're right. I think people are, for the most part, in this market, they're learning that, the KOLs, the key opinion leaders really don't know jack shit about anything, and that the markets can, basically do whatever the market wants to do whenever it decides to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are learning that, following the advice of some random person on the internet or on the nightly news or some, random article from the internet is probably not going to be your best bet at being successful. So I hope what people are doing is they're getting smarter. I posted about this on X the other day at Archer Opines. So, if you guys want to go check that out. But basically, what's happening right now, I hope, is that all of the nonsense is getting shaken out of the market. The degens, the degeneracy, the people who expect something for nothing, the people who like to dump on each other. I think for the most part, those days are behind us as the market continues to mature. And when I say mature, I mean just grow. Like more and more big players come into the space, and the market looks more and more like a traditional market. So crashes are less severe, gains are less severe. There's a smooth curve that starts to emerge, as markets get larger and larger. And, for the most part, I think what's happening is a really good thing because it shakes out the stupid. And if you are smart and paying attention and following adoption stories, and you look at the size of markets, the Bitcoin market, for example, still $1.56 trillion. I mean, Ethereum is sitting at 281 billion, and it's probably one of the crappiest performing tokens in the marketplace. And then you've got Tether, BNB, XRP, USDC, Solana, like in the top 10 there, the market caps are so large. I mean, you're talking, almost 100 billion for XRP, for example. Binance is sitting over 100 billion. Tether, almost 200 billion. I mean, Tether's a huge, huge company. And then you've got Solana at 60 billion. I mean, these market caps are massive. And these markets are not going to go away as long as building and adoption continues to occur. And that's exactly what's happening. So it looks like what I've been seeing of late is Bitcoin has been less volatile to the downside, because of course if you have people underpinning those buys, like if you've got strategy underpinning those buys, that it's not only strategy that's underpinning that. Other companies around the globe are doing that. I've got a partner of mine who does investments for Saudi oil companies. They've been privately buying Bitcoin, acquiring Bitcoin over time in every single drop. So it's not just Saylor and Strategy or the few companies that you're aware of here in the US. It's other people who are flying under the radar that you wouldn't necessarily think would be buying some of these assets. So, I mean, with Bitcoin still sitting at 1.5 trillion and that being the lion's share of the market, there's really nothing to worry about. I mean, these are not zero bound assets, not zero bound markets. And with the advent of like banking and transaction processing coming to chain, I mean, they're not going to be. So if you're smart, you're just going to acquire on the way down, and then if you want to take some profits, you'll sell on the way up. But if you're long-term holder, then this is just good news. You've got sale prices in the top 10 and you should be buying.
That's true. I mean, I think the argument of, big players buying in silence is something that has been around for quite some time, right? Like whenever markets went down, everyone was suddenly posting like, hey, retail is panic selling, while, the big players accumulate in silence and, keep stacking Bitcoins. Um, yeah, I mean that's definitely true. I mean we see that, right? Like the good thing about Bitcoin is everything is on chain and trackable, so we can see what people do, and that is true, right? Like this has been true for the past couple of months actually, that you could see that people or whales who have a lot of Bitcoins try to get even more, why people who held Bitcoin for a year or less are starting to sell again. But I mean, when you talk about the markets maturing and degens are out of the markets and all that stuff, do you feel like for an outsider, like someone not involved in crypto right now, maybe in metals and stocks and everything, but a serious investor, do you think someone looking at the crypto markets right now would be interested in investing? I mean, obviously, buy when blood is on the streets, right? So right now is actually the right time to buy. And shout outs to Mark, actually. He was someone who already always called Solana below 100. I think it happened yesterday, if I'm correct. And yeah, we never know where the bottom is, but buying all the way down is definitely the right way. Um, but yeah, I mean, we haven't only seen that in crypto. Oh, bless you, man. We haven't only seen that in crypto, right? We have seen it in the metals markets as well. Like a big sell-off happened. A lot of people sold their metals. One thing I'm quite interested about, and maybe you know more about it. I read that there is some kind of like disconnect between like paper silver and the actual metal, because I read from many people in the space that they were not able to acquire actual silver, like the metal. Instead, only paper silver is being traded. And if you look at the past, at some point, one thing happened that um, when was it? What the fuck? I just read it. It was like at some point. What historical event was that? Maybe you can help me. When paper gold was it? I think went to zero, and just the metal became. I need to check that, but give me 1 second. I just read that today. It can't be that I forgot that already. Um, let's see. One thing I wanted to one other thing while I'm looking for it, I wanted to touch on when you just spoke is actually Solana. You mentioned like all the market caps, and an interesting fact is actually that I think just a couple days ago, like in January, when Solana was somewhere around 130 bucks, the market cap was already as high as it has been in the previous cycle high. So I think we had like in like 2021 when Solana reached a price of $255, I think we had a market cap of 75 billion, and we are now at somewhere like 65 or 64, right? Like inflation is heavy on Solana. I think it's around 8%. But I think it like it decreases over time. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah, I don't think it's 8%. I think it's more like 6. I'd have to look it up. But yeah, all of the proof of stake, excuse me, all of the proof of stakes type, tokens, and I realize Solana's not quote unquote proof of stake; it's proof of history or whatever. But it's the same idea. Like the tokens that you can basically virtually stake are going to have inflation. That's the whole, that's the whole way that the reward system works. So if you are looking at inflation rates, and of course, this pairs itself out to adoption curves as well. If you have more Solana in circulation and more holders, you can have a lower price and still have the same market cap. So that's all that really means. And yeah, that's perfectly normal and natural. The inflation continues to fall. And I think the interesting thing about the Solana ecosystem was it topped out at like massive transaction volume over the last week. Like I think it was one of the greatest non-voting transaction volumes ever in the history of Solana. I think they broke records this past week. So with Solana now having its tokens traded on Coinbase, which if you have a Coinbase account, you can literally trade Solana tokens right inside the app. With Solana being tied to so many wallets that are now opening you up to like futures markets or perpetual markets, there's a lot of transaction volume happening on Solana that wasn't possible just a year or two ago. So that's going to impact the total volumes and also the interest as well. But right now, Solana is sitting at like 59 billion in terms of market cap at 103, roughly $104 per token. So yeah, at any reasonable valuation, say around 130, 140, it's going to definitely surpass what the previous maximum market caps have been for sure.
Yeah, I was just checking the numbers. So at the beginning, inflation rate was at around 8%, but is being reduced yearly. But you gotta add that there is that burn mechanism, that a part of the transaction fees are being burned, and that obviously kind of slows down inflation as well. And with more transaction volume, more Solana is being burned.
Yeah, it decreases 15% a year until it reaches like 1.5%, which is like Federal Reserve target. Like the Federal Reserve target for inflation in the monetary system is 2%, which I don't think they've hit in my lifetime. But the Solana network is basically programmed 15% drop every year until it reaches 1.5% inflation, which would be normal and natural to keep pace with use and population. So that's how Solana works.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. And the one thing, like the historical event I was referring to, was of course the German history. Of course, Weimar Republic. Paper silver collapsed to zero in real terms because it was only a paper claim denominated in a currency that became worthless. Physical silver, by contrast, rose by millions of percent in nominal terms, simply reflecting the destruction of the paper money. More importantly, physical silver massively increased in real purchasing power and was used in trade. Paper went to zero, physical became scarce and dominant.
That's right.
And yeah, I saw that like in a post with a guy who was trying to acquire physical silver, and the guy who was usually selling it was like, I'm out of stock, like nothing left. And like do you think it's the better way to acquire like actually physical assets right now?
I mean, if you're a metals investor, you want to hold physical. That's the whole, that's the whole spiel behind, holding gold and silver, for example, is that you want to bear the instrument. It's a bearer instrument that you want to hold, either in some way of custody where you can always access it. Because as you pointed out, like paper silver, paper gold are really meaningless in terms of like emergency situations. Even if you have like your gold and silver in a bank vault, at a safe deposit box, like the bank's closed on, Sundays or whatever, closes at 5 p.m. through the week and 2 o'clock on Saturday. I mean, you're not going to be able to get to your holdings, right? So all of the gold bugs and silver bugs basically advocate keeping physical gold and silver on hand. And to me, that just makes sense if you believe in that play. I mean, if you don't believe in that play and you just want to trade the market, paper, silver, and gold is perfect. But you have to realize that when you're buying paper, silver, and gold, you're buying a derivative of the physical thing. Just like if you're buying, a futures contract on pork bellies or wheat or something like that, you're not actually buying the thing in that moment. You're buying a contract that you want to trade. So if you're buying gold and silver on a futures market, or you're buying gold and silver through an ETF, in most cases, the ETFs don't hold enough physical gold or silver to match the holdings of the people who are actually holding the ETF. And an ETF is just an exchange traded fund that, you can trade gold and silver just like you would stock on the stock market, same type of thing. Same thing in the futures market. Very few people ever take delivery of a futures contract. They're just trading them back and forth, trying to make money on the arbitrage between the buy and the sell. So yeah, I mean, if you are an inflation, hawk, and you're concerned about purchasing power, you would definitely want to hold it in some place where you could actually get to it and take physical possession. Because in that scenario, if you needed something or you wanted to transact with someone, you could do so in real life without having to trust a third-party intermediary.
When it comes to actually owning physical gold or silver, I do not own. I think I own a little bit of gold, but not worth a mention. But like I feel like it's like you at least like you need a treasury or something, or you need to bring it to the bank, right? And then it's like not in your custody again. So yeah, I'm not sure. Like I've never really had an opinion about the metals, but I feel like when you diversify your portfolio, it definitely makes sense to. I think you made that example back in the days that you tried to um, bring gold, or like I'm not even sure if it was an attempt or just a thought. When you tried to move gold from the United States to Canada, wasn't that something you mentioned once?
Yeah, I've done that.
Having trouble or something.
Yeah, I've done that
You
a
did
couple of
that.
times. Yeah, I usually when I moved metals, I just drove it across the border. I'd have it like stashed under the seat in my Jeep or something. And most of the border crossings for Canada are pretty much in like isolated rural areas out west. So they don't really, they're not going to like search your car unless you're just some really shady character. I've also taken it on planes and stuff like that. In small amounts. But I mean, when you're transporting stuff like that, different countries have rules on what you can bring in and out of the country. So like right now, for example, China has controls on the fact that you cannot take silver out of the country. In India, I don't know if it's still true, but for the longest time, you couldn't take gold out of the country, or if you could, it was only a tiny amount. And so most people would just convert it to jewelry, and they would wear their jewelry out of the country. Right. So it just depends on the jurisdiction that you're going in and out of and what their limitations are. But right now, the big news in silver would just be that the fact that the Chinese are not allowing silver to leave the country. And that just points to the fact that they have, plans for electronics, because electronics require silver. High quality electronics all use silver. Medicines, all kinds of different things, all kinds of different industrial uses demand silver, whereas gold is more used as something people hoard in terms of jewelry or collectibles and that sort of thing. Of course, you have the gold bugs who buy the actual physical gold, but the most of the gold that's ever been mined and still exists in the form of jewelry or something. Whereas silver is more of the type of industrial metal that's getting used in different types of things and can potentially end up in landfills. And so if you are in a local jurisdiction that cannibalizes electronics, like old electronics, you'll find that there are companies that will take an old laptop or an old cell phone that's being destroyed, and they'll try to pull all the rare earth elements and silver out of it before it goes into the landfill. And there's enough money in that to where if they do specific volumes, they can actually make money just cannibalizing old electronics, right? And as silver prices increase, that type of activity only goes up. So, I mean, in the past year, silver went from like mid 20s to around maybe $30 US dollars, to where it is today, which was, I think last time I looked, was like $77 or $78. I mean, you're still 120, 115% positive, even if you bought as late as last year, and you're still doing really well. And of course, miners and people who are cannibalizing these types of electronics are incentivized to do it more. And of course, this will bring the price down as production comes online. You know, again, supply and demand curves have to be met, but there's definitely a market for it.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, I'm trying to build a bridge right now from the metals market to the collectors market, as this is obviously some way to diversify your portfolio as well. And you and I, we've found a really interesting statistic um, about, let's see if I can find it right now. I got it right here. So the statistics is from the Art Basel and UBS. It's actually a survey of global collecting 2025. And they asked 3,100 high net worth collectors. I'm not sure how much money you need to have in order to be classified as a high net worth collector. But yeah, they asked them about their collecting habits, and the result is that right after paintings and sculptures, NFTs were the third ranked medium that these people spend money on. It's actually like is sculpture like collecting actually a thing in the United States?
Collecting? Well, I mean, I don't know about, for the average person, but I mean, people who have high net worth will spend money on anything. And of course, high end museums and galleries will curate anything, right, of interest. So, I mean, I think when they're talking about sculpture, they're not necessarily thinking just in terms of like what you would traditionally consider, like, some guy with a
Sculpture.
chisel, taking, recreating the statue of David or something like that, right? Like that's not necessarily what they're referring to. I think they're referring to like all different types of like pottery, sculpture, figures, that sort of thing, right? Like it's a whole, within every little niche, there's always a subculture, just like you could call like action figures, you could call them sculptures, like they're sculpted figures, right? In the same way that you could call, like pottery from like 100 or 200 years ago, sculpture, because a lot of that, even a lot of that pottery from like the early days in the U.S. is highly sought after. Like certain pieces can bring, hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of dollars, depending on the maker, depending on the color, depending on if it had advertising on it or not. Like all of these different things would be classified as types of sculpture.
Yeah, okay, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I was even a little concerned when I read that, like, just reread that when I saw, like, NFTs are behind paintings, that's totally fine, but behind sculptures, man. But yeah, it definitely makes sense the way you frame it. So if there's such a big variety of things being classified as a sculpture, then it makes sense. But yeah, the interesting part here is that we reached a peak of 15% during the NFT boom in 2022, which is like the share we have here. And that average share of digital art and collections increased from 3% in 2024, which is really low. Like 3% is almost nothing, but it increased to 13% in 2025, and that's quite interesting, especially if you look at it the way we keep framing it, right? Like we keep saying that everything consolidates to quality. People collect art. They have art, digital art, as as a big part of their collections, and that increase reflects the market, and that's what the article says, reflects a market that has passed through speculation, correction, and now something like maturation. And that's a really good thing. I mean, if you look at these people, right, like when we speak about traditional art and even like things like sculptures, like we looking at Web3, we kind of had that impression that it's like a little niche, right? Like that we are just like 500 people collecting NFTs, but it's like it looks like there is actually even like a group of collectors outside of what we do with the NFT collections and everything, just wanting to own traditional art pieces digitally,
Hmm.
like one of ones, right? Like those are not editions usually, at least from how I understand it. But those are like artists, maybe some are even famous. Like I got some names here. Let's see if I find them. Um, mm, 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 mm. Yeah, I'll just go through it. But yeah, that's like a group of collectors actually wanting to own digital art outside of, probably outside of Crypto X, or maybe it's people we haven't found yet, but it's actually so good for the markets, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just because you're in the NFT world, that doesn't encompass all of what someone might collect from a digital perspective. Like one of the members of our community, Mark, talks a lot about collecting Disney stuff, and Disney's done a pretty good job of sort of turning this into like an NFT type of a situation. But the truth is, like all of these major brands have done some form of digital collectible in one way, shape, or form, and they may or may not be NFTs in a traditional sense. But if you think about just like some of the gaming, like some of the gaming that you would run off apps on your phone, a lot of the rewards are digital. There'll be some sort of digital token or some sort of digital piece of artwork or a screensaver or something to where, like the younger generations coming up are accustomed to seeing this as being a thing that they own. Like they're accustomed to seeing it that way. It wasn't like it was mailed to them and they had it on a shelf when they were a kid, like it was when I was a kid. Like if you had a Star Wars fan in the family, that Star Wars fan probably had a Star Wars figure in the real world, right? And that figure probably sat somewhere in the house, like on a shelf or a desk or something. And it was just always there. It was like a constant reminder of something that they enjoyed or they liked and wanted to acquire. But that's not the same if the things that you enjoy, whether it's video games or movies, if the rewards come to you first in the form of something digital, then and that's your only exposure to collectibles, then that's going to be your default mode, right? Again, it's just about how people are socialized. There's actually a great documentary on Prime right now. I forget what it's called, but it's all about collecting cards and that sort of thing. Because over the last 5 years, the collector sports card market went through the roof, like it went insane. And I remember, when I was a kid, I remember after church there was this one guy who would buy packs of bubblegum cards. And he would bring all the boys together and he would open up all these card packs and he would just deal out cards. He would just give us all baseball cards. And it was like the only reason we wanted to go to church was because we were going to get free baseball cards at the end of it, And, I remember getting a good card and being excited about that. But there was no one to share that with because there was no internet at that time, right? Like all you had was like the early Apple computers or, like early spreadsheets and stuff like that. And, nobody was using that stuff to communicate. It was just like something they used for a productivity tool. So this pre-internet stuff, the only way you could interact with someone was person to person, and you would do trades or whatever person to person. But the internet changed that. And now that you can actually hold something digitally and interact with people that you don't know, and in many cases don't even know what they look like. I mean, the digital space looks more real to people who were brought up in that than someone like myself who was brought up with like physical collectibles. So it's just like the next evolution of collectibles too. And the other piece of that, the other caveat to that is like in terms of ownership, when you think of ownership, if you're coming from the real world, you think of it differently than if you're coming from the digital world. And, you know, like I'm talking to you from, you know, like this big table in my kitchen right now. I've got this laptop sitting on my table. In my house, I'm talking to you in your house in Germany. And, you know, we're taking for granted the fact that we have a house. Like a lot of younger people don't have houses and don't have the ability to afford something that they can own and decorate and make their own. That doesn't exist for them right now due to economic circumstances. So if you wanted to be a collector and you knew that you were going to have to move or that your lease was going to run out, like how much of the house would you want to fill up if you knew you had to lug this stuff around to the next place? Right? It's just not convenient. Right? So the other piece to it is, you know, the idea of ownership of a space and the ownership of things in the space changes drastically with like your physical ability to actually store things and hold things and then have to move them around, right?
It's really interesting that you kind of mentioned the different generations as well, and because that's actually something that the survey mentioned as well, that there is like some sort of generational shift. Gen Z, especially, you know, the digital natives are a key audience for digital art. Many own what does it say? Many own digital artworks and feel comfortable with this medium as part of daily life. And here is where it gets interesting, because it says that the trend is strongest in younger collectors and also noticeable among women, with Gen Z women showing particularly high ownership rates of digital works compared with older cohorts. And that's quite interesting, right? Like, especially you and I, we have been working with a lot of women in Web3, and we have had so many artist incubator drops. A lot of artists are women, and that's actually, it's kind of surprising, considering that, you know, most of the crypto people, you know, the crypto bros are, you know, looks like they're men, and it's like dominated by you know, a male audience. But suddenly you see that NFTs, it's completely different. What do you think is the reason for that?
The differences between the sexes and what they're collecting.
No, the difference why, you know, it looks like the general crypto audience is, you know, dominated by a male audience, while and on the same, on the up on the other hand, we have, you know, women being really um, yeah, really active in collecting NFTs, and generally in the NFT space.
I haven't really thought about that. I'd have to put some thought into it. I mean, I could give you maybe a hot take on it. You know, just like we live in a world where, you know, for the last, I guess, decade or so, we've been taught that there's no differences between men and women, which is biologically ridiculous. There are absolutely differences between men and women, both biologically and psychologically. And men in today's world, especially, I think have struggled more than any cohort to create and find success in both in both the financial world and the sexual world. And both of those things are basically going to govern a man's quality of life. So if a man sees that there's opportunity to make quick money in crypto, he's going to be drawn to that, probably much more so than a woman who may not be as driven by the sexual marketplace or the success marketplace to seek wealth. And that doesn't mean that women don't seek wealth. They do, but that their strategy is usually different. It's usually not a direct strategy. It's usually an indirect strategy. And so when I think about the differences between the crypto markets and the NFT markets, the crypto market is very much aggressive, very much trader oriented, very quick, very sort of, you know, brochacho type language, you know, slang and, you know, like quick moves here, quick moves there, trying to make a buck. It's very sort of shallow and specifically focused on gains. Like it's all about gains, gains, gains. Whereas the NFT market, if you are into the artwork side of things, is more about beauty. It's more about, artful creation. It's more about enjoying the visuals. And so those two cohorts or those two markets are going to draw very different people. So if you just look at the basic psychological programming of a young male versus the basic psychological programming of a young female, you can easily see why men would be drawn more to the trading, quick, fast money side of like the crypto thing.
It's actually really funny because when we have artist interviews, or we have artists on our spaces, especially like Daria and Maria, I think both of them, whenever we speak about crypto in general at the beginning of the spaces, they are like, yeah, usually our like my husband or my boyfriend or whatever is like doing the crypto stuff, and I'm just here for the NFTs. And that's quite interesting that it kind of fits to the statistics. But yeah, let's also jump a little bit into what the good fellas have been doing. I know you have been quite busy figuring out how the code works this time. We got the core pieces finally ready to go. People, you will be able to submit your pieces to the wallet I will be providing right after the podcast recording. And then we will hopefully, like, I know you and I, we kind of struggled with the 21s and the artist incubator pieces, always having to people remind to submit the pieces and all that stuff. Obviously we will not reach every owner of the Goodfellas, all the seven batches. So we will keep these pieces until people reach out, of course. um, and then we should have them. Like, how happy are you that this is basically the last core conversion you have to make?
Well, it's always nice to get to the next chapter. I mean, because to be honest with you, that was impinging a lot of our growth and a lot of the things that we could do with the tech. So yeah, I mean, it's always nice to get through the task and get it done. But it's also really nice to go back and have the opportunity to do some of the things that basically I missed going into like the initial remints of the Art of Mob work. And that is like adding so many different, I guess I'm going to call these layers for lack of a better term, because I have plans for the artwork, but adding so many fields and characteristics and traits to the metadata that weren't there initially, that's going to give us a lot of flexibility in terms of what we can combine and unify around as we go forward with the technology, but also the artwork. There's a very specific plan around the artwork and how it can be used and what we can do with it. And we're one of the few projects in the known, NFT sphere that actually have put a little bit of thought into this, and a little bit of energy and effort around how everything can be united. So these are the types of things that, regardless of whether or not we did the core updates or didn't do the core updates, would have had to happen in order to bring like all of these different traits and characteristics to life inside the pieces. So the pieces as they exist today, quite possibly may not exist the same in the future, and they may be modifiable. They may be usable in different lore and different stories. And these are all the pieces that we added, or that I've specifically added, and that the data can encompass as we go forward. So it feels good to know that we've got all this optionality, in addition to knowing that the task is complete, and that again, this is going to be something that really serves collectors and the collectors market going forward. So I'm pretty stoked for it, to be quite honest with you.
Absolutely. I mean, this has been one thing that we wanted to finish for quite some time. It felt like, with the 21s and the artist incubator finally done. Like, you always had that in mind, that the big collection needs to be converted to core as well. Happy that it's been done now. I know you've spent quite some hours on figuring out how to do that the best way. But like I said, I'm happy when people will finally get their core pieces, and we will have finally like the listings on Magic Eden updated and all that stuff, and we can move from there. And then we will have the first mint of the year in actually, let's see, probably 18 days from now. We usually try to mint on the 21st, but we figured that it's even more fun to have a mint during Spaces, and as we will have Spaces on Friday the February 20, we decided to have that mint on that day. And as we will always like trying to give some perks to listeners of the podcast, we are exclusively dropping the name of the artist right here today. So keep whatever you hear from now confidential. So yeah, the artist we are going to have a drop with on in 18 days is named I'm not really sure what the right pronunciation is. It's either Viorica_art or Viorica_art. You should find her. I think I'm not sure if she's in the One Love DAO, but yeah, she is like definitely within like the group of people we have had drops with already. Like she is very close to Anna Shi. I'm not sure. I think she's from Russia, but yeah, she already yeah, agreed on creating the piece. Of course, she agreed on coming to Spaces. She was actually the first artist I reached out to in order to get a piece for my personal gallery. And yeah, check out her timeline on X. I think the art she creates is awesome. I think she will, create a great addition to the art gallery we have so far. And yeah, I think she is definitely worthy, like kicking off the artist incubator season this year. So yeah, looking forward to the drop. And I think, Jason, you mentioned you came across her art as well on your timeline. Is that correct?
Yeah, her art is actually one of the few that actually pause when it hits my timeline. She's actually really good. I was surprised that it was the artist that you mentioned to me, to be honest, and I'm stoked to see what she creates for the AI gallery. It's going to be an absolutely insane drop. So definitely excited for that.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's always so exciting because when I talk to these artists and I'm like, trying to give them an idea of what we expect. I mean, we usually let them create all that like freely, and they can decide what to do. But obviously, we have like we don't even have that frame anymore of having one central character. And I think with the last Seven Dawns event, and especially Muna Luna's piece, we kind of opened the door to you know even like a bigger or like a bigger variety of art styles and concepts in the artist incubator works. But yeah, like I said, it's like she checked out the gallery we have so far, and she was like, yeah, I can do it, like give me a week or something. And like I have no idea what she's going to do. And it's always like I'm really like whenever a message from her pops up, I my heart starts beating faster because I feel like, man, like let's see what she created. It's definitely going to be so good. And yeah, she is going to be the first artist. She will be on Spaces. We will have a little interview with her, so you guys can get to know her. And yeah, it's going to be fun, I think. And then Jason and I, we will obviously have to come together to see. Like, do you have any idea of what the next big drop is going to be? We never spoke about that actually.
The next big drop for what specifically?
Yeah, for the Goodfellas, like, do we come up with a new Sirens batch or something maybe?
Yeah, definitely got some batch mints that we need to get going on for sure. After going through all of the mail art, doing the data, redoing the pieces, and just like doing little things like just taking time to number them and make the numbering look beautiful on the displays. The artwork is so good. Like I'm stoked to get that rolling. And I think what I'm actually going to start doing is maybe dropping a batch of one of ones that I'll release over time, and maybe make those available to the community depending on how I'm feeling in that moment in time. Like I want them to go to people who actually care about the artwork, and from that maybe create some 21s that that are similar to some of the most popular of the one of ones. And, we'll see where that goes. But ultimately, it's just going to come down to wanting to get more of the female batches out, more of the male batches out, while we maintain what we've been doing with the Artist Incubator and the 21s. So again, remember, the goal is to grow the collections over time. And so we're going to have room for more collectors inside the primary collections. And of course, the utilities that are associated with them, from like the wallet viewer on down to like the staking idea that I've spoken about a couple times. So obviously lots to do, no shortage of hours in front of the computer to get it done. But one of the things that I've missed over the last, I guess you'd say, maybe 6 to 8 months, I've done a little bit of creative work, but not a whole lot, because of all of the updates and codes and drops and, special events that have been going on from Arttober all the way through to, prepping animated batches and such like that. It's going to be fun to get back and just like create some beautiful imagery around this artwork. And, just remember why it's so special. Like this artwork has a history. And the reason that we saved it was because it was so good. And every time we, take a look at it and want to create something with it, that all is carefully curated and carefully thought out in how it can fit into the future storytelling that we want to do. So yeah, lots to do. Batch mints definitely, and lots more artwork to create.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I actually just one last question before I sent you into the week. What's your general idea or impression of like creating customs for people? Is that something you meant when you said creating one of ones?
I'm sorry, say that one more time. I'm not sure I heard the whole thing.
Yeah, like what's your general idea of opinion of like creating custom pieces for people? I know many artists out there do that. And was that like meant when you mentioned creating one of ones?
Yeah, for sure. So, how, like, are you asking about like how they would be distributed or how they would be released or what?
No, like what I'm asking is like, that many people out there, like the Vixens, for example, Maria, they create custom pieces. Like people can almost like give you directions where they want to go with that custom. And do you feel like this is something that is possible for the Goodfellas as well?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. We've already mentioned this before. I think that's why I was a little bit confused. So like a lot of the higher echelon holders in our community, of course, they'll have the option to commission certain pieces. But specifically what I'm referring to right now I have a ton of ideas that I want to execute that may or may not fit within the context of a batch drop. And what I really want to do is play with adding more IP that I absolutely love, that fit with the theme and fit with the sort of look and feel of the pieces. Like you've seen the Priest that I did, you've seen the Sinatra piece that I've done, you've seen the like the patriotic piece that I did with like the Revolutionary War soldier, like the what was the other one? I can't remember. Oh, like the Purge piece, like all of these different pieces. There's so many different ideas and different directions you can take these that I don't want to be limited to one per batch, right? So I want to basically start creating all of these ideas and see which ideas align with the most people's interest. And then if there's one that people really, really love, I might make it into a 21s by doing some different variations on it or something like that. But basically these pieces I would mint into the collection and basically allow people to bid on them if they want, and then if we have upper echelon collectors who want specific pieces created for them, then we can have that conversation as well. But that would be more of like a rewards type situation than like a sheer creation type situation. Because, if you're taking instruction from someone, it's really not a custom. It's really, it's really a one-off for them. That's not the same thing as doing a custom. So a custom would just be like a one-off from the minds of like me basically, or one of the other artists that we use, that would fit in the inside our collection and go to whomever liked it. It wouldn't be specifically designed for an individual. But the customs that you're talking about, like the one-offs that people might request, those would be incredible, because we can make those pieces look like the ideas that our best holders have, or that our highest echelon holders have. And that's something that I definitely want to do. And I have actually mentioned this a couple times. But again, like getting the core pieces all onto the same, or getting all the pieces up to the same technology level with the core was priority one. And now that that's done, we can start expanding into some of these other ideas that we've talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, after all the time you've spent, with code and all that stuff, it's pretty good to see the creative energy uh, back for you, and being like wanting to be creative again and create new pieces. I mean, we've seen so strong pieces from you coming, especially in the last couple of what was actually the last piece you created? Let me just think about it. The last piece you created was, I think, for was it like the 21? Like the Star
Yeah.
Wars piece? Or am I wrong?
The
Yeah,
last
right?
one I did would have been a 21's piece for sure. I don't remember there would have been a one of one for the sixth batch or seventh batch, but I don't remember which one that was. So there should be, right now, there's 8 one of ones, and I would have created all of them but one. And I can't remember what they all are.
Yeah, but I feel like the last piece coming out of your hand was like the one coming with the drop from Cataray. Is that possible? Like the Star Wars piece?
I don't know what the very last one was. The rug pull graphic was one that comes to mind, but I don't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
might
yeah,
have been
yeah.
the last
True,
one.
the
I
rug
can't
pull.
remember.
Yeah, true. Absolutely. Yeah. And with that, we will wrap it up for today. I'd just like to say thank you to every listener for spending your time with us. And we'll get into the week. We will, of course, soon start the promotion for the Artist Incubator piece. We will start the distribution of the core pieces. And yeah, we wish all of you a really great week. And we look forward to see you guys on Spaces on Friday. Don't spend too much time looking at markets, of course. Not too much fun right now. If you got some coins laying around somewhere, I think it would make sense to spend it on Solana right now, all the way down. Nobody knows where the bottom is. I think I just saw someone posting like, "Hey, I'm waiting for Sol to hit $70, and then I'll buy." You never know if that's going to happen or not. So do what Mark does, DCA all the way down, and you'll be good. And yeah, we'll see you guys on Friday. Have a good one. Bye bye.
Take care, guys.